What's going on, everybody? My name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how I built this stacked 2x3 coffee table with built-in storage on Modern Builds. So this build is a little simpler than what I typically do, but we're back in Andrew Schultz's studio and we're building out some furniture for the living room area. This whole studio has a sort of industrial loft vibe, and I think a table that looks like a stack of lumber is gonna fit really nicely. Everything we used in the studios is oak and fancy plywood, but out here in the living room area, we're gonna keep it simple. All radiata pine plywood in 2x3s and 2x4s so that they match. Oh, and really quick, this table I built was inspired by this table that I saw a couple years on Pinterest by the blog A Beautiful Mess. I'll leave it linked below and you should check it out. Just want to give credit where credit's due. Now let's get this build started.
I started by separating my 2x3s by which ones were the straightest and which ones had the nicest grain. I set these boards next to the radiator to help them dry out before I used them, and a few of them got really curvy. Next, I measured and marked my nicest group of boards, cutting them in half. These are originally 10 feet long, and my coffee table is built out of 5-foot long pieces. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted this whole table to feel like a stack of lumber, so I wanted to stagger the ends of all of my boards. That way it looks like somebody placed them down, but didn't take too much time lining everything up. Then I used my pocket hole drill bit to drill a recess halfway through the edge of each of these 2x4s, that way screws could reach into each board. I used a bead of Gorilla wood glue and 2.5-inch wood screws to attach all of my boards together. And as you can see, I was really wrestling them, trying to keep everything as flat as possible. Now this doesn't need to be perfect, that's sort of the point to the whole project, but if you start with a flat foundation, it's only gonna make the rest of the steps way easier. And if you're interested in building this project for yourself, make sure and follow the link down in the description to my written article where I've got free downloadable PDF plans. It'll have basic diagrams and dimensions so you can build this project with no problems. I made this quick clamping setup so that I could attach the board on the edge of the coffee table without any screws. This was before I started using the small trim head screws that I use later on in the video, and I was worried that traditional screws were gonna leave way too big of a void. So I basically built this 2x3 frame with runners so that I could glue this edge piece onto the panel. I used wood shims to squeeze the panel together and clamp everything tight while the wood glue dried, and it ended up working perfect. This isn't anything that I had tried before, but I had seen other woodworkers make clamping jigs like this. And since we were working in Schultz's studio and all we had were spring clamps, I was sort of forced to give it a try. And I'm glad I did. It ended up being way easier than I expected. Out of my curvier boards, I was able to cut a bunch of 18-inch sections that I'm going to use to build up the walls of this coffee table. Traditionally, I would set up a stop block, but these don't have to be the exact same size, so just leaving a mark worked great. The next step really is simple. I just used a bunch of 18-inch sections built up to create a void in the middle of the coffee table where there will eventually be storage. I just made sure to use full 5-foot sections on the outside pieces. But now, let's just let the time lapse run. It seemed like the toughest part of this project was staggering all of my boards in a way that still felt natural. I think it's just human tendency to try and find patterns in things, and I was trying to fight that as I was working. I built up another panel just like I did for the base, and I used that as the tabletop, and I screwed that down with the trim head screws I was talking about earlier. And to create the lid, all I needed to do was stack up 5-foot long sections of 2x3s to build up a door that blended in seamlessly.
Today's episode of Modern Builds is brought to you and sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of online courses to help you learn anything you're interested in, whether that's accomplishing a goal or learning a new skill. Plus, Skillshare courses are designed for real-life, busy people in mind. They're chapterized into digestible chunks. That way you're able to learn on the go and also have reference if you ever want to go back in time to reinforce the things you learned earlier. One of the newer Skillshare courses that I'm currently taking is Instagram-worthy photography, Shoot, Edit, and Share by Brandon Wolfel. So far, it's been a great course and it covers everything behind a good Instagram photo, from the creative behind it, the equipment that you use to shoot it, the location, all the way through editing and posting a photo so that it has the best chance to do well on Instagram. And Skillshare, especially compared to in-person classes and tutorials, is super affordable. And right now, for you all watching, Skillshare is offering 2 months of their premium membership for free. That way you can explore their classes and find the things that connect with you best. And from there, premium memberships to Skillshare sit right around $10 a month, which is awesome. So make sure and follow the link down in the description to learn more and to get those 2 free months of Skillshare Premium. Now back to the build.
My buddy Johnny from JT Woodworks had the best idea for attaching the door to the table, and that was just using a simple door hinge on the bottom of the assembly. Even though this door is heavy, it's not nearly as heavy as what a front door is, so these hinges have no wobble. After that, I grabbed some 80 grit Gator sandpaper to sand down the front of the coffee table as well as the back of the door. That way they join together really nicely. And for anybody like me who's building and sanding projects all the time, these value packs on random orbit sanding pads from Gator are a great deal. Save money and always have sandpaper at the ready. I'll leave links down in the description. From there, I switched over to only sanding with 180 grit sandpaper, and I sanded the rest of the table, avoiding any of the stamps or logos. I wanted to keep that authentic lumber feel. Next, I ran outside to spray paint the hairpin legs that I'm using for this coffee table that I picked up from DIY Hairpin Legs. These are super heavy duty. They use 1/2 inch rod instead of 3/8 inch, which a lot of other legs use. I painted everything with a couple of coats of Rust-Oleum 2X in Solstice Blue, which is a really great blue-gray color.
All right, guys, I've got to come clean real quick. I thought if I just used one of those magnetic door latches to hold the door closed, then everything would be fine. But that 2x3 door is really heavy and there was no way it was holding it. So I went back to the store and I picked up these. They're 3/8 inch neodymium magnets, and I thought if I used 5 or 6 of these along the face of the door and where it met the coffee table, then maybe that would be strong enough. But I was wrong again, and unfortunately, this was the last day I was in New York, and I still needed to take photos and videos of the coffee table. So instead of going back to the store again and buying a really chunky rare earth magnet that I know would work, and I'll leave a link to down in the description, I actually screwed the lid closed temporarily. That way I could get photos and videos that I needed. Now, obviously, next time I'm back in New York, I'm gonna fix that. I'm not gonna leave a project incomplete, but I had to do that temporarily. I just wanted to be straightforward and honest with you guys. Don't use weak magnets. Use some big, chunky, rare earth ones to hold your door closed. It's heavy.
To finish out this project, I applied a couple of coats of water-based polyurethane that I'll leave linked in the description. And with that, this table is done. Overall, I'm very happy with how this project looks. Like I said before, we are looking for something that was a little bit whimsical, but also a simple and easy build, and this fits both criteria nicely. It really fills out that loft vibe that this living room area has, and I still think it's a really fun beginner project, just like the TV stand that I built as well.
If you want to see any of the other projects that I built in Andrew Schultz's new studio while I was in New York, there's a playlist linked down in the description. I've got furniture, I've got an entire podcast studio, and a couple of desks that might be useful. The videos that I put out this week sort of conclude the entire New York trip, and I'm excited to move on to newer, bigger projects. So if you're not already, make sure and click that subscribe button as well as the notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with new Modern Builds videos. And if you want to keep up with me throughout the week, I am at Modern Builds on Instagram, and I post there all the time. So far, 2020 is off to a hot start, and I can't wait to see where this year goes. So thanks a ton for staying tuned, and we'll see you next time on Modern Builds. Bye, guys.